Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here and welcome to the Faculty of Economics and Business. This first session will be divided into two parts. The first part will be a presentation from Bruce. So Bruce will update us about the current development in IAS and also probably a brief overview of what is IAS. Okay, so we've heard from Professor Tata about the IFAC and all the initiative related to education, but now we're going to hear in more detail about the initiative, how far it already goes up until now, and especially the current initiative related to sustainability and technology. So we are going to hear a presentation from Bruce, maybe about 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And then the second part of this session, we're going to have dialogue with these two lovely ladies that already sit in front of us. They are, of course, I think I don't really need to talk more about their competencies, but I'm going to introduce them later before the dialogue. So I will first give an overview of Bruce CVs. So currently Bruce is the head of accountancy education at IFAC since 2023. So thank you so much, Bruce, for being here, because I think it will be different if we can communicate, we can dial, kind of have discussion in person compared to maybe if we hear on Zoom, or maybe if we, kind of send emails or messages to IFAC. So thank you so much for being here. So prior to being the head of accountancy education at IFAC, Bruce also a principal, initially responsible for member engagement and leading the PAO development and advisory group at IFAC. And before that, Bruce has a really long credibility related to maybe in TOSAI, maybe related to more like public sector accounting. So I think we have a lot of educators here that are also specialized in public sectors. So I think then we can talk about various dimensions of the education standards. Without further ado, Bruce, the floor is yours.
Well, greetings, everyone, and thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you today. I want to recognize all of our VIP special guests. I think all protocols have been well observed today, but we really want to thank you all for your support of today's event, for welcoming myself and Tanya to Indonesia, and providing this opportunity. My role at IFAC is around leading accountancy education, but I want to be honest and say I don't get to talk to educators very often. I don't get to be in a classroom. I used to be, but I don't anymore. And sometimes, although the international work can sound very fancy and important, we can be very detached from the reality of people like yourselves who teach the young talent the future of our profession. And so on that note, I've noticed that taking photos is quite important in Indonesia. And I just want to get a sense, first of all, can you raise your hand if you are an educator? And by educator, that means you teach in the classroom or you do anything that involves helping to develop future talent for the profession. So can you raise your hand and can you keep your hand up? If you're an educator, I'm guessing that's most of you here today. Raise your hands nice and high. So if you're an educator, your hand should be up in the air. And I'm just going to do a selfie with all of you because with your hands up, this is going on LinkedIn. So let's... Yeah, the panel as well. So it's going to be a bit tricky. I'm going to need a couple photos maybe with this side. There we go. And with my panel, with your hands up. Thank you so much. And it really is a privilege to be with you today because you are such an important part of ensuring the future resilience and relevance of our profession. It's easy for us at IFAC to talk about education standards, to propose revisions to the education standards, which I'll talk about, and to assume that everyone will just figure it out, how you're going to implement those changes. As educators here in Indonesia, the professional bodies, including IAI and others, will give you guidance on what you should be teaching. But in reality, the process of going away, developing learning content, curricula, assessments, we know is incredibly challenging and a huge amount of work. And that's before you even try and get a young person to understand what you're wanting them to understand, which is a difficult process. So I just want to really recognize the important work that you all do. So I'm going to ask if my slides could be put up. I'm hoping they are ready. The slides for the first session. We'll just give it a moment. There we go. It's coming. All right. Wonderful. So in these initial remarks that I'm going to give, I'm going to tell you a little bit about, first of all, about the international education standards and give you a quick crash course on what they are about. And then I'm going to talk a bit about our proposed revisions to these standards and what that means for us as a profession and how you can get involved in that consultation process. And then finally, I'm going to conclude with some remarks about what is needed from a capacity building perspective to actually make it possible and to get this to trickle down throughout the world and across into our profession. So if you could move on to the next slide. In fact, you can skip this one onto the next slide. There we go. Right. So can I just get a sense, and it's okay to, if you don't know this, how many of you know about the international education standards? Right. A few hands. Okay, this is good. All right. So the international education standards, I know most of you will know about the international standards on auditing. You'll know about the international financial reporting standards, IFRS. You'll know probably about the standards that are issued by ISBA, the ethics code, and some of the other common international standards. In sustainability, I'm guessing quite a few of you have heard about the International Sustainability Standards Board and IFRS S1 and S2. Can I just get a sense? If I say IFRS S1 and S2, who has heard of IFRS S1 and S2? All right, not a lot of hands. So this is really important. So what I've just described, this last part, S1 and S2, is some of the beginnings of perhaps one of the biggest changes that the profession has ever seen, and taking us into a territory of a completely different realm of reporting, but a completely different realm of the type of information we're providing to decision makers within business, investors, and other stakeholders. I'm going to come to that in a moment, and we'll talk a bit more about what sustainability reporting and disclosures actually are and what they mean. But let me start with the education standards. So the international education standards are a suite of standards that are maintained by IFAC. Previously, they were developed and issued by a board called the International Accountancy Education Standards Board. Professor Siddhartha was one of the members of that board. It was dissolved in 2019, but this international education standards were not dissolved. They remained effective. It was simply that there was a shift to a different approach to accountancy education at IFAC. And so the standard setting process for these standards is continuing and is continuing to the same level of quality and due process that was there under the previous board. And in fact, now Professor Siddhartha still has a role because the IFAC board will ultimately approve any revisions we make to the education standards. And so in his role as an IFAC board member, he is a part of that process and making sure that the work that IFAC and its International Panel on Accountancy Education does on these revisions is appropriate, that we've consulted effectively, that we've listened to the input of many different stakeholders, including the education community, to make sure that the standards are fit for purpose, relevant, and can have the intended impact that was planned. Now, what are these standards all about? The simplest way I can describe the education standards is to say that they are a global baseline for accountancy education. They set in place minimum requirements that are supposed to be used by professional accountancy organizations like IAI and others around the world, to ensure that the quality of professional accountants that are developed is consistent across the world. They are authoritative for IFAC member organizations. So IAI is an IFAC member organization, and one of the commitments they make as a member of IFAC is to support the adoption and implementation of the international education standards. There are 8 education standards, and you see them up on the screen there. And there's kind of 2 types of standards in the suite of standards. The one type revolves around principles about the structure of accountancy education. So IS1 that you see on the left is all about entry requirements. And I'm going to talk about IS1 in a bit more detail this afternoon because it has some important implications for the attractiveness of the profession. IS5 and 6 in green at the bottom there essentially say that there should be an element of practical experience in any accountancy qualification. That happens in Indonesia, where it's not just about going to university and getting a degree, but it's also about getting on-the-job experience. That's part of your learning journey. And IS6 on assessment, that there should be an element of assessment built into the qualification. And this is usually those final high-stakes professional exams that we see. But there are other types of assessment that can happen throughout the process of a qualification. And then on the other side, once an aspiring professional accountant is turned into a professional accountant through this process, they are meant to remain committed to continuing professional development. I'm very pleased to see that you can get some credit for CPD here today for attending this event. But of course, we expect all professional accountants to be committed to lifelong learning. And that is part of what IS7 requires. So that's the one part of the standards. The other part of the standards, and those who were paying attention would have noticed I skipped some numbers. IS2, 3, and 4, as well as IS8, I'll come to that in a moment, but IS2, 3, and 4 codify learning outcomes, essentially describing what learning should have been accomplished by the end of a professional qualification. So if you think of a competency framework, which would inform a curriculum, the IESs can inform those competency frameworks and those curriculums. We don't show all the steps in the process. We follow a very principles-based approach to demonstrate the learning outcomes that should be achieved by the end of what we call RPD. So you've heard of CPD, continuing professional development. In the education standards, we also have RPD, initial professional development. So these standards describe those learning outcomes. So when we talk about revisions to the education standards for sustainability reporting and assurance, we are talking about revisions to IS 2, 3, and 4, the actual learning outcomes. So I'm going to show you in a moment an example of some learning outcomes. IS 8 is similar to that, but that is at an advanced level for audit engagement partners. We have learning outcomes that describe the level of competence that should be in place for somebody who's going to sign an assurance or audit opinion. So let's look at what a learning outcome might look like. If we can move on to the next slide, please. I'm conscious this next slide is going to look perhaps a little bit small on the screen, but let's see if we can move it forward. One slide, please. I think our slides might be stuck. If we can just move forward one slide. There we go. Oh, back one. Thank you. So I'm recognizing that this is quite small. It's quite small for me as well on the screen. So let me just pull up on my side here. Give me one moment. So this gives just a snapshot of what you might see in IS 2, 3, and 4. So within these standards, there are a table that gives both competence areas and then specific learning outcomes. Now, the competence areas, for example, the first one says financial accounting and reporting. We're actually proposing a change to that competence area in our sustainability revisions, but let me not get ahead of myself. Those describe broad areas, kind of subject matter areas, topics, essentially, just to bring some structure to the learning outcomes. I want to be very clear. The competence area are not the subjects that you have to teach at the university, for example. Sometimes they are, sometimes they might be the title of a course, but we don't intend for an entire subject to exist within one of these competence areas. Rather, the various learning outcomes across the different different standards across IS 2, 3, and 4 all integrate together. And so even in the education process, you may be integrating some of those. But nonetheless, to give some structure, we have these competence areas. And then within the competence areas, we have the actual defined learning outcomes. So I'm just going to read, for example, number 4 there under financial accounting and reporting, which says, prepare financial statements, including consolidated financial statements, in accordance with IFRS or other relevant standards. So that describes something that essentially a newly qualified professional accountant should be able to do: prepare financial statements in accordance with the standards. Now, if you take a moment and you think, hold on, this presentation is partly about revisions to the education standards for sustainability reporting, you may already be thinking, well, that just says financial statements. What about sustainability reports? What about sustainability disclosures? And so this is part of what we're doing in our proposed revisions, is to recognize how we need to embed sustainability reporting into a learning outcome like this one. So I won't spoil the surprise yet about how we've done that. I'll come to that in a little bit. But then on the other side there, we have IS4. And IS4 is focused on your ethics, your professional behaviors and attitudes. So in there, you get different learning outcomes, different competence areas. One of the competence areas that I've expanded there is professional skepticism and professional judgment. And we know how important these concepts are to the professional accountant skill sets. So one example there, let me take number 2, apply techniques to reduce bias when solving problems, informing judgments, making decisions, and reaching well-reasoned conclusions. Now think about it, what I just read about financial accounting, preparing financial statements. Do you think that what I just read here on applying techniques to reduce bias when solving problems, do you think that might impact the way that you prepare financial statements? Do you think professional skepticism might impact the way you look at data that you might use in the preparation of financial statements? Of course, yes. So you see the integration. These don't sit alone, but for want of having a structure, we have them showed separately. But in the way we describe how to implement the education standards, we really encourage this integrated approach. Interestingly, if you read number 2, as I just did, this is one where we have actually proposed revisions for sustainability. And I'll explain why, because it may not seem obvious. You may think, well, that could equally apply to sustainability. But what we have recognized in this process, and this is part of this fundamental shift and change that sustainability reporting brings to the profession, it's a change in mindset. It's a change in way of thinking. It's a change in the way we reach decisions, the way we make conclusions. No longer will accountants be just sitting on their own as accountants thinking that we have all the information to make decisions, but we're going to be working with others. We're going to be working in multidisciplinary teams, working with experts from different fields that have nothing to do with numbers. I love the fact that this tagline for IAI at the moment around seeing beyond the numbers. We're going to be working with people who never claim to be good with numbers, but who have expertise in things like environmental science or engineering or social sciences. So there's going to be a shift in some of, even at this behavioral level, the type of things we need from accountants. So that's just an example of the learning outcomes to give you a sense of what we're talking about. If you want to know more and to see all of the learning outcomes, you can simply go and view our standards at education.ifac.org. A very easy URL to remember, education.ifac.org. Or if you just search in Google for the International Education Standards, you should find your way there. So we can move on to the next slide, please. So fundamentally, we've gone on this journey to think about what the impact of sustainability reporting assurance will be on the professional accountant. And I want to make something clear here. When I say what the impact of sustainability reporting and assurance will be, I'm not just talking about the process of developing a sustainability report or the process of sustainability assurance. I'm talking about everything that comes before you do the reporting and everything that comes after. So sustainability information is informative from a governance perspective, from a risk management perspective, from a day-to-day business decision-making perspective, your internal management accounting, information that needs to be provided to the business. So we're not just making decisions using financial information, but we're thinking about the effect of climate change, for example, on the business, the effect of business on climate change. We are thinking about where this data comes from and the process of gathering that data, the internal controls over that process, analyzing that data, and ultimately using it to inform external reporting, an assurance process. And then even after that, what does that information get used for after it's reported? How does that affect investment decisions? How does that affect decisions that the company itself will make going forward? So this is this is such a pervasive change. And again, it's not just a change in the type of things we're going to be reporting, but it's also a change in thinking around the way business operates and the way we provide value as accountants. So our fundamental question as we've embarked on these revisions is to say, what competence in sustainability reporting and assurance is needed by every professional accountant? Today, there are not many professional accountants playing in the space, but we believe in the coming years, that might be 3 years' time, 5 years' time, 10 years' time, nearly every professional accountant is likely to be somehow involved in sustainability reporting or assurance work, and everything that comes before and after, as I described already. So we need to be asking the question today, what competence is required in the future professional accountant? And for all of you as educators who are preparing the future of the profession, we want you to be looking forward and thinking, how can I provide young folk with the competence they need to be effective when they practice accounting in a way that we didn't, that is completely, that has a whole new aspect to what they will be doing. And that's part of our role as educators, is to look forward and think about that. And so I'm so grateful for this opportunity to be talking about it with you today. And I hope coming out of today's session that you're going to make it your own responsibility, your own business to go and learn as much as you can in the space, to upskill yourself, so you can get ready for preparing future professional accountants. So if we can move to the next slide. So I've briefly mentioned a few things about the way we revise the international education standards. Just a couple of points to emphasize. At IFAC, we have something called the International Panel on Accountancy Education. And this panel it does a variety of things around advising IFAC on education matters, but it also is responsible for identifying revision projects for the education standards, and then actually overseeing the process of those revisions happening. So a project proposal was approved by the panel last year. We then embarked on extensive information gathering where we listened to stakeholders from around the world, and I'll summarize that in a moment. The panel believed that they had gathered enough evidence to support a project to revise the standards. That decision was made in November, and since November last year, we've been on a journey with our sustainability working group who's focused on this to draft changes, proposed changes to the standards. And just last week, we issued the exposure draft to the global community. And that exposure draft is out for consultation for 90 days. So this is an opportunity to say, please consider getting involved in that consultation process. And we encourage you, either as individuals or as part of the wider community in Indonesia, to be a part of having your voice heard on whether the proposed revisions are appropriate, or if there are other aspects you think we should be thinking of. So ultimately, this is done under the oversight of the IFAC board, who makes sure that we follow a due process. And I'll speak a little bit about what will come after near the end of my slides. So if we move on to the next slide, just very briefly, I wanted to show you this to highlight the fact that we do not sit at IFAC, in our New York office, quietly in the corner, setting standards. We do not do any standard setting work, firstly, without the involvement of our volunteer community at IFAC, but also without listening to the global community and the widest group of stakeholders. So on this project, we really have embarked on what I would say is unprecedented levels of information gathering for an education standards project. That has included extensive stakeholder outreach, which has reached many stakeholders, including preparers, auditors, investors, regulators, professional accountancy organizations like IAI, academics like yourselves, and sustainability experts. We commissioned an academic literature review, and that literature review looked at the academic literature, but it also looked at professional literature, as well as literature put out by large accounting firms. And finally, we did a global survey, which received over 300 responses from 78 countries. So with all of this information, we were able to make the decision that we needed to make revisions, but we also had around 1,000 data points of information that we could use to inform the way we made the revisions. And so that's been a really important part of the project. If we move on to the next slide shows another important part of the project was to tell the story of what we were learning as we went along. And so we put out a bunch of thought leadership on this work. One being the literature review, that's the one in green you see there, that was published on the IFAC website in January this year. So that is available for you to read and use. About 2 weeks ago, we put out a short 2-page summary. That's the green and purple document that you see there. A 2-page summary of everything we heard during our information gathering. And the way that document is structured is using a framework that we've been applying, which looks at what hasn't changed and what's new. What hasn't changed is what is in the professional accountant skill set is transferable to sustainability reporting and assurance. And a bit of a spoiler alert there, a lot of what we have in our current skill set is transferable. But we also asked the question, what's new? And again, not to spoil the surprise here, but there is a lot of new stuff. There's a huge change in mindset, a lot of new concepts to learn and to develop our competence in. So that document summarizes that at a high level. And then, of course, our exposure draft, which has come out last week, is part of our output. We will continue to put out non-authoritative guidance, and we will most likely embark on a project to consider revisions to that IES 8 standard. If you remember that from our slide earlier, that's the one for audit engagement partners. But that we didn't think that was the right place to start. We've started with IES 2, 3, and 4. So moving on to the next slide. So I'm now going to talk just briefly about the approach that we have taken. And this is just to give you a sense. And as you think, this is what informed our standard setting process, but this is the same thinking that you may want to apply as you consider how this affects your curriculum as you teach the various disciplines around accounting. The first aspect of our approach was that it was focused on initial professional development. So we're not thinking about somebody who's at an advanced level, who's been practicing for a long time. The emphasis of this project was around that point of qualification. We recognize that all professional accountants, including those who are qualified, are going to have to go on a learning journey, but that isn't necessarily something we address through the education standards. But these revisions will also inform what is needed by all professional accountants who are already qualified. Secondly, we followed an integrated approach. And I really, if you take no other lesson from this session this morning, I want you to remember this one. Sustainability reporting is not a standalone topic. We know that to some extent, in the way this might be delivered in the classroom, you may create a course on sustainability. That's absolutely fine. But sustainability affects everything we do as an accountant. So when you teach financial reporting, you want to be including sustainability disclosure in that. If you're teaching management accounting, the budgeting process, costing, things like that, what's the sustainability angle to it? If you're teaching tax, are there special incentives or allowances that governments are bringing in to incentivize the transition to clean energy, for example, or to other changes that are needed to support a sustainable world? anything that we teach, if you're teaching audit, you want to be thinking about issues of assurance and sustainability assurance. So we have taken an integrated approach to how we teach, how we are recommending that should be delivered from an education standard perspective. And then finally, we set this as a global baseline. And I mentioned this earlier, the education standards are a global baseline. That doesn't mean that with the maturity of the profession in Indonesia, that you won't say, hold on, in Indonesia, we want our people to go further. We want to be ahead of this change. We want to be producing global leaders who are the best of the best in all aspects of accounting, but including in sustainability reporting. So we are setting the global baseline. That does not mean that you can't go further. The other aspect of this global baseline terminology, we kind of stole it from other standard setting boards. The ISSB, when they were setting, got put into place and then issued IFRS S1 and S2, they described that as a global baseline for sustainability reporting. But that gets built on through local requirements and other types of reporting from other frameworks. But the global baseline is what everyone should be doing around the world. In the same way, we've felt it important to align to what the different standard setting boards are doing in setting their global baseline. So we haven't reinvented terminology or concepts, but we've really tried to embed some of the concepts that are coming through in IFRS S1 and S2, as well as in the proposed assurance standards and revisions, the International Code of Ethics. So this is not anything different from what you're going to be seeing coming through in the other standards. So let's move on to the next slide. Yeah, I'm conscious of time.
5 more minutes.
5 more minutes. I'm going to my last 2 things that I want to tell you about. If we can move, we can skip to the next one. Normally, I'm the person bugging people to finish up, so I'm very glad that you're reminding me of time. This is the slide that summarizes what our proposed revisions are. I'm not going to get into a huge amount of detail here in the interest of time today, but if you go and read our exposure draft, you're going to find these concepts coming through. Do you see the embedded approach? We have changes that reflect how sustainability reporting affects business acumen. Concepts like systems thinking, which enable an accountant to be able to understand how the organization operates within the context of society and how societal elements, how the environment affects the organization. It also emphasizes the need for accountants to think about sustainability information and financial information in an integrated way. Data and information, the type of data and information we collect, things like value chains. So in sustainability reporting, one of the important concepts is to understand as a business about how climate is being affected throughout your value chain, all your suppliers, all the people you work with and collaborate with. Behavioral competencies. We've seen the need to really strengthen the issues around how accountants collaborate and communicate, their ability to work in multidisciplinary teams. So I really want to encourage you. I know students, you know, when you ask students to do group work, they don't like it very much, right? Most students get very uncomfortable when they have to do group work. That type of activity in the classroom is so vitally important, preparing students for a world where they're going to work in teams with others. But I would encourage you to even think about how you might be able to bring in students from other faculties to work on joint projects with accountants so they can be exposed to the thinking that has been developed in other disciplines. Under there's a concept of informed conclusions. One of the things we're really emphasizing in these revisions is the concept that decision-making doesn't happen in isolation. So we are moving from wording that says well-reasoned conclusions, where you make a logical conclusion based on information you have, to an informed conclusion that is using information from a variety of sources, from a variety of disciplines. And then the concept of intellectual curiosity. Accountants are supposed to be committed to lifelong learning, but in this new world, in a fast-changing world, in a world that's of sustainability that's going to require adaptability from the accountant as they see many different types of information and different types of contexts. The ability to want to learn more, to be curious, is something we really need to ensure is being developed in the classroom. I know it is already to some extent, but we need to even up our game further. Finally, we did the obvious thing, referencing the reporting standards and the assurance standards. And so those are built in. So my final comments revolve around capacity building. And this is really the message I want to leave us with as we move into the panel discussion. If we can just move forward, I think it's 2 slides. Yeah, quite a few more slides. Sorry, let's skip forward a few more slides until we see the one that says capacity building. So let's move forward. There's a lot of detail in these slides that you're welcome to take a look at and see about the revisions we've made. But if we can keep moving forward to slide 21, let's skip 6 slides forward. You can see I was way optimistic about how much I could cover in my time. Here we go. This is the biggest challenge. I can tell you all about the detail of the revisions, but the challenge is going to be, how do we build capacity of professional accountants who are ready to deliver this work? And in doing that, we need to think about the learning needs of preparers, of assurance providers, of educators who are in red, not just because you're here today, I'll tell you why in a moment, future accountants, non-accounting experts, regulators. Why is educators in red? For me at IFAC, one of the things that will keep me up at night is wanting to know about whether we are doing enough as a profession to equip you as educators to be able to go out and do this work, to do this teaching, to teach the future of our profession, to make sure they're equipped to be leaders in sustainability reporting. And my next slide shows how you might achieve that. Through collaboration. The most critical thing, I can't teach you how to do sustainability and reporting and assurance myself because I'm not a practitioner, or no longer. But you know who understands this best is those who are at the cutting edge of this, who are already developing sustainability reports in organizations, those who are already providing assurance opinions on sustainability reporting. And so we need to be very, very, very careful to ensure we are working together as educators with professional accountancy organizations, but also with those in practice, firms and employers. This is the moment to really step up our game, inviting practitioners to come into the classroom to engage with students, having our own network of practitioners who we can go to as we develop case studies as educators. And thinking about not trying to do this on our own, but really listening to those who are in practice. So I really want to encourage you as you go on this journey, do not feel like you are going on this journey alone, but surround yourself with others. This is my final thought. I know it's scary thinking about having to develop new content, new curriculum, new learning materials, new assessments, new case studies on a topic that you may never have had to actually do in real life yourself and that you were not taught. But you have people to support you. You have the practitioner community. You have young academics. I'm not sure if any of you have noticed how some of the younger academics, especially PhD students, accounting PhD students, many of them are doing research in this area. So tap into them. Let them help you learn. Let them come into the classroom and do some of the teaching. You don't have to hold on to it all yourself. Leverage those who are doing the research. And then your friends in other faculty who perhaps you seldom collaborate with in the classroom, but you see them all the time when you're walking around campus, when you're at wider university meetings. We need to cross over those silos that we have in the education community. And those who are teaching sustainability as a discipline in other fields, bring them into your classroom as well to engage with the accounting students. You work with them to develop impactful case studies that you can use as teaching resources. So that is the message I want to leave with you, and appreciate the time. I know there was a lot of information, but I'm looking forward to the discussion. And really, this is the message. Don't take the journey alone. The changes are big. There's a big shift coming, but it's also the greatest opportunity our profession has seen in a generation. And as educators, you're at the forefront of driving this change. So thank you in advance for the work you're going to do, and thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Bruce. Really comprehensive presentation. Sorry that we cannot get into all the slides, but we'll share the slides after this event, so everybody will be able to see all the slides. And I think IFAC has a way for people who like ask questions and to communicate, and even some kind of forum where you can see all the discussion. So for us in Indonesia, I think we are really familiar with the outcome-based education, right? OBE. We have a lot of trainings about OBE, how we create curriculum that use the OBE framework. So as accountant, as a people who deal with accounting education, we actually have a standard. So Bruce mentioned it's a global baseline. So maybe we are thinking about how to adapt, like to everything might take some time, but at least we know. So this is the standard. This is what everybody's around the world is thinking about accounting education. So that's a first step of understanding what we will need to integrate into our curriculum. So with us today, we have these two lovely ladies. I will introduce them really briefly because we kind of ran out of time. So the first one is Dr. Liani Leo, which is the chair of the Professional Accountant Certification Board, or the SAPIAI, and also Ibu Rosita Ulisinaga, the chair of the Indonesian Sustainability Standard Monitoring Board. So both of them are academics, practitioners, as well as standard setters. So I think we cannot have more suitable people to sit in this discussion with Bruce. So I think I will probably just repeat a little bit. So let's start with you, Bruce, just to summarize what you've been discussing before in terms of the changes in the IAS. So what do you think are the most critical changes that's being anticipated by IFAC in the accounting profession over the next decade? I know you talk about like the 3 years from now, the 6 years, 7 years from now, and that's how the revisions being triggered. But can you kind of talk a little bit more about what is the most important aspect that people at IFAC think? So we really need to start revising the IAS and how it will still apply for maybe a decade from now.
Thank you. So, I mean, I think it really is two things. One is sustainability, the other is artificial intelligence. And in the context of sustainability, it's a change. Yes, it's another type of reporting, but it's a type of reporting that is so different. It's different because this is forward-looking information. This is information that's inherently ambiguous, uncertain. As accountants, I think historically we've been more used to getting things exact. I know we've had estimates and, but even in those fair value and all that kind of thing, we're still trying to get to an exact number. But in sustainability disclosures, it's not like that. It's a lot less certain. Some of it's not even numbers. Some of it's qualitative disclosures. And now imagine trying to ensure that qualitative disclosure is correct to even provide assurance over that. It's different. Forward-looking information that gives information about the short, medium, and long term. One of the things we're bringing in our revision is the concept of scenario analysis. And I know that has tended to be in curriculum already, but it's going to be at a much higher level and greater prominence because it's going to be featured strongly in the disclosures. So we need to be good at doing that type of work. So just dealing with uncertainty is, I think, perhaps one of the hardest parts of sustainability reporting and of the discipline. And then this issue of as you work with that uncertainty, you also need to work with people who are from different disciplines. So it kind of brings out this idea that when we talk about a change in mindset for sustainability reporting, it's actually a lot of the behavioral stuff that needs to change. The way we think as accountants, what it is that we are trying to do, the value we bring to businesses, the value we bring to organizations, to markets, and really stepping up our game. And then you get artificial intelligence, which thankfully is not very good at uncertainty, but it's very good at the exact stuff. So some of the stuff that we have prided ourselves on, accountants, to some extent may be replaced as AI picks up, and is already technology can prepare the financial statements for us. So how much further does AI go in being able to inform business and support decision making? We've got to be very careful because some of the core skills we have and competence as accountants will not be enough in a world of AI. If we were going to demonstrate our value, we need to lift ourselves up to higher order thinking, critical thinking, professional judgment, and then this issue of being able to work across disciplines. Technology is not so good at that. It can work with the data it's got, but try and introduce different perspectives. Well, that's where it starts to get a bit more tricky. That's where as humans we are much stronger, and so you can see the relation between these two things. We don't know yet. We're probably going to commence a project very soon on the impact of artificial intelligence on our education standards and on the practice of accounting. But it is a fast emerging area. But when we talk 10 years out, who knows how much that's going to change the work of accountants. And we need to be very, very careful to be positioning ourselves and to be ensuring that our education is preparing us for a world where we need to be essentially the masters of AI, using it as a tool to increase the value of the product that we provide to our clients. So I'd say those are the two things you already want to be thinking about. But again, it's a mindset shift, and it's a shift in the type of competence we need to be developing. Knowing the standards, there are already AI tools that know the standards. That's no longer a differentiator. They've been able to actually advise a business and give good advice that considers a myriad of factors. That is an area where we're going to be stronger.
Okay, thank you, Bruce. So I'll move on to Dr. Liani. As we know that the SRP is the one who's responsible for the CA certification. So what Bruce just mentioned, that, we have to be prepared, right? We want our students to be always relevant. It's not like in 10 years, nobody, need their services anymore. So what the EIS right now trying to achieve is basically how we can keep current in the profession. And CA is basically how we can guarantee there is a certain level of competency that's, kind of being achieved by this future accountant. So maybe Dr. Liani, you can explore a little bit about like what's the SRP is doing right now and like the current updates, knowing that we have now some current development about sustainability and there's like UIS and how the CA certification will kind of adapt to these changes.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I will share a little bit about DSAP, the Dewan Sertifikasi Akuntan Profesional. It's the Certification Board of Professional Accountants. So what our main task is basically determining the competencies of professional accountants. Of course, we refer to the IESs of the IFAC. And then what we do is basically having the evaluations and assessments of each persons who are interested to become professional accountants. The designation is CAs. So basically, we receive contributions from Ibu Bapak Dosen for the questions for the assessment. Thank you. Thank you very much for the contributions. And as far as the update on the sustainability topic of in the ZA exams, we only have an introduction level in the financial reporting exam only. So yes, we are very much aware that we still have so much to do by including sustainability topics in other CA exams, like the audits, the assurance, the management accounting, the financial management, and also the strategic management, and also the taxation. Yes, so we just have to admit that we still have much to do.
Thank you. So basically, it's a must, right? You cannot say that, oh, I'm in tax, so I don't need to know about this. So in the future, then CA syllabus will include sustainability in all aspects of competency of accountant. So now I'm going to move on to Bu Rosita. So Bu Rosita is the chair of the Indonesia Sustainability Standard Monitoring Board, and we know that they're working on developing this standard. And as Bruce has mentioned, this is a collaboration effort, right? So it's not just academics doing our work, but also standard setters and practitioners also involved in how to integrate the sustainability. So can you explore a little bit how the standard setter actually create the sustainability standard, but knowing that also there is some improvement, there is some revision on the yes. Thank you, Lucky.
Thank you. So I think before I answer the question, it is very important for all of us as educators here, understand why suddenly professional accountant has become a very important element in this new era corporate reporting. Yeah, because maybe after we leave this event, everybody asking question, why now? Why not before, right? So if you observe IAI since 2022 has already envisioned that this is becoming a very important for the accountant in the future. What is the difference? Okay, so maybe some of you familiar with the POJK 51. So everybody in the financial sector has already prepared the sustainability report. So the question is, who actually preparing that in the company? Are they accountant? The answer is no. So the question is whether IAI or you as the educator involved significantly in that journey. The answer is no, right? So the question is why now? Do you know why? Or you just sitting there and hearing us and don't know about that? Because this is very important. Before this new era, actually there are so many frameworks about the sustainability reporting. And the ISSB actually try to adopt some of the framework, not starting from zero. So what is the new things? The new things is because now all the framework has one goal, to provide information to link that sustainability risk and opportunity to what will be the impact to the value of the firm. That's something missing in the previous framework. So meaning there will be alignment between the sustainability risk and opportunity and the financial reporting. And because financial reporting is our expertise, accountant expertise, then to align those two need our expertise. So that's the clue why now professional accountant is very important role. Okay? And is it a good news or bad news for all of you? That's good news. Because I think for the last 10 years, I keep hearing from the student, the senior SMA, accounting is no longer attractive for the best talent because they keep thinking it's always about financial reporting, right? It's not sexy anymore. Digital technology is more attractive. Even art now is becoming more important. Designing, art. This is a good news for all of us, including you. Why it is important for you? Because if the accounting profession is dying, you are dying. Is that true? Yes. So we need to collaborate together to ensure this profession, accounting profession, is not dying. So this is a good news. Therefore, since 2020, we in IAI is very, very strongly supporting this initiative. Why? Even before ISSB is setting up, we have the task force. See, we are not setting up task force after the ISSB is set. We already setting up the task force even before the SSB is set. So we are not followers. Yeah, we are driving this. So accounting profession in Indonesia, bros, is actually driving this because we believe this new corporate reporting era will be a very good news for accounting profession in Indonesia. Claps your hands. Okay. Okay. I think that's very important. before I go to the next journey, because the next journey is all about the challenge. We need to start with what will be the benefit for us to go through this very challenging challenge. Bruce has already mentioned a big challenge, right? Therefore, from 2022, we set up the task force. We try to build the awareness to all stakeholders in Indonesia. This is very important, right? Of course, the benefit is to have a consistent, harmonized sustainability reported in the world, which we can drive the sustainability initiative easier, consistently around the world. I think that's the macro benefit, but for us as an accounting profession also has a benefit. Now, what will be the next move from the accounting profession? Since 2022, we try to build the awareness, and we got the mandate from the Congress that we can set up the board, the new board, we call it the Sustainability Report Board, to drive this, and we are supporting Bruce to align with the IFRS ESSP S1, S2. I think everybody also, not only us in IAI, but also OJK, Ministry of Finance, also in the same page with that, right? Because we believe this is very beneficial for the world, and including Indonesia. Therefore, in November 2023, we already set up the board, and we set up the board with a more governance structure. Before, we don't have the monitoring board. We have the consultative board, but the consultative board role is different with the monitoring board. The consultative board is more on the consultation process. There is no decision role can influence the DSAK. But this monitoring board we set up because this is a new standard setting process. It is very important there is a governance process to ensure the RENSRA atau strategic planning involve not only one board, but need to have a second board. We call it monitoring board. Now, what is happening now? The board, which consists of various stakeholders, I need to mention that the board consists of Ministry of Finance, representative, di sini ada Pak Ari, ya Pak, Pak Agus ya Pak, ya. And then the Ministry of Environment and Forestry also involved in that board, representative from OJK, representative from Bank Indonesia, and also academics, and also the accounting profession yang lain. So it's a multi-stakeholder board, which we hope this board can come up with the suggestion to the monitoring board for the roadmap, how is the best approach to implement IFRS S1, S2. Let me introduce you with IFRS S1, S2 as in a very high level, because when Bruce asks whether you are aware about IFRS S1, S2, not many people raise hand. IFRS S1, S2, there is S1, S2. S2 is actually more guidelines on the climate only. S1 is like PSAK 1. Yeah, I hope you understand PSAK 1. It's more on the what is the concept or framework to prepare the sustainability report. So the S1 actually not only regulating the climate, but beyond climate. So actually the IFRS S1, S2 itself can be the global baseline to prepare end-to-end sustainability reporting, not only climate. But if you ask whether IFRS has already provided clear guidelines on beyond climate, the answer is not yet. It's still under development, right? Yeah. So we are now only have S2, which is more climate focus, right? Now, I think it's very important for us. This is very important because we do expect the input from the educator. What will be the best approach in Indonesia to go to IFRS S1, S2? Singapore, for example, has already made decision they will not 100% start with IFRS S1, S2 as a whole, but they will focusing first with the climate. They will adopt S1, S2, but only for climate. That's the decision made by Singapore, right? I think similar also with Australia. I heard Korea has different approach. Not decision yet, still in the exposure draft. They are planning to implement S1, S2 as a whole. Now the question is, what will be the approach for Indonesia, right? I think the board still gathering information from various stakeholders, including you, I hope. Please, if you have any idea, any suggestion, please send your letter to the board. It is very beneficial for them because when we have already decided the approach, we do expect that that will represent the majority of the few of the stakeholders. Maybe I will stop there, Bu Lily. Thank you.
Thank you, Bu Rosita, for the very comprehensive explanation about S1 and S2. So I think the next time we ask question, who heard about S1, S2, everybody will raise their hand, right? And then hopefully when we ask about who knows about IIS, now everybody will also raise their hand. So now maybe, just to give you, so you already asked, so most of our audience today are academics. They are lecturers at various different universities all around Indonesia. So this is the right time. You said, you rarely talk to academics. Now it's time for you to talk to almost all academics in this building. Okay. So maybe the next question will be related to, academics, educators, and academic institution. So Bruce, you mentioned that the kind of the revision is being triggered by the change in practice, the change in the industry. And Baliani, you also mentioned that you basically see what's the need in the industry and then see the education and integrate it in the certification, in the GA certification. So maybe just kind of, because I think we are here from different academic institutions and we might have different access to professional organization, different access to industry. So maybe start with you, Bruce. You can kind of give some overview or what you think about what strategies that academic institutions should be involved with the industry so that they can stay current. Because I think waiting for the standard to change will take some time, but the change in industry is really kind of rapid, right? So how can this academic institution kind of keep current by kind of involve and work with the industry to stay current with the curriculum and the knowledge that they develop?
I think it starts with, first of all, being empowered to ask the right questions. So I'm hoping coming out of today, just something as simple as going and making sure you've read through S1 and S2. You've had an opportunity to look at some actual sustainability reports. Of course, they won't be under S1 and S2 yet, but existing sustainability reporting that is out there, particularly within Indonesia. And that helps you to have at least the vocabulary and the context to be able to ask good questions. But then I think it's at a number of levels. I think it's at the institutional level, universities having more formal relationships, making sure the relationship with the professional bodies is strong, but also with the various employers, and particularly the firms. And then the individuals, as individual academics, as individual educators, many of you have friends who are in practice. Cultivate those relationships because it's important to be connected to people who are doing this in the real world. So thinking about it on both of those levels, and I want to just give a couple of examples of how then you might leverage those relationships. One is, I can tell you, the global firms, especially the big four, they already have high quality education offerings that they are providing to their staff and to their clients on sustainability reporting. They're at the cutting edge of this. And one of the messages we're giving to them is to say, please make sure you also offer some of that to the education community. But I encourage you to have those engagements, and maybe that's more at the institutional level, to look for opportunities to allow the staff in your departments to be able to receive some of that type of training. Another way is to think about the development of case studies. And I know it can be incredibly hard as an educator to create a case study where you're sitting on your own and you've got to dream it up essentially. But you maybe haven't been in practice yourself for a number of years. It's really tough. Don't be scared to ask for help, and make sure you leverage some of those relationships, whether it be from the institutional level or your own personal relationships, to make sure that as those case studies get developed, that you develop them with those in practice. It can be tricky because if you ask somebody who's doing this in the real world to share information, first of all, there's sometimes limits to what they can share. And secondly, they don't think like educators. So the information they give you will not be the out-of-the-box solution you need. You've got to apply your own expertise in education and pedagogy and assessment to adapt that, to maybe take away some of the confidential information, anonymize it, all that kind of thing. But you can do that. It takes work, but you can do it, and it's better if you do it with those individuals. And then the last suggestion is if there is opportunities for educators to actually go and get a little bit of on-the-job experience in this area, look for those opportunities. You don't want to leave the classroom completely, but if you can find ways to leverage these relationships to get short-term secondments or essentially internships almost, to go and actually watch and see how this happens and maybe do it a bit yourself, that's going to make you a better educator. Some of the best educators I know, and I'm sure some in the room have done this, are the ones that stay close to practice, that become experts in education, but also make sure they don't lose touch with real world practice. So just some ideas. It's a lot about relationships though, and it's a lot about asking the right questions. And I think as professional organizations like IAI, we have a huge responsibility to facilitate opportunities for networking and relationship building and knowledge exchange between these different parties.
Thank you, Bruce. Yani, you want to add
question?
something? Yeah, the same question.
I agree 1000% with Bruce that we need to foster relationship with the industry. Yeah, the corporations, the auditing firm, the consulting firm. So concrete ways is we could invite those practitioners to come into our class to share their experience, to share their views. Or also we could send our students to the real world, to the corporations, to the firms, auditing firms, consulting firms, to learn about how they conduct, how they do their work, their accounting work in the real life. So basically, Ibu Bapak, in classrooms, I often receive questions like, Bu, apparently we heard the saying that what we do in real life is different from what we learn in the classrooms. I would say, no, that's not exactly true. Because what we learn in classrooms are simplified cases. So in real life, we have complicated cases. Complicated by what? Complicated by our behaviors. Yeah, so we need also to learn not only critical thinking in classrooms, we need to develop our critical thinking, but then we also must aware that we need to develop our professional skepticism and professional judgment. We could only learn about professional skepticism and professional judgments through practice, through experience. I think that's what I want to add.
Thank you, Liani. So I probably will talk a little bit about the educators. I think at this point we all agree that the sustainability is the future, right? So we need to integrate it into our curriculum, into our teaching. But what about our own competency, right? I'm teaching taxation, but if somebody asks me about carbon taxes, it's probably kind of out of the world for me, right? So and probably take some time for us to update our knowledge and competency. So maybe just I'm going to ask the three panelists. So what do you think, so how far we are as educators? So what we've already discussed, so this is how much we should integrate into our curriculum, into preparing our students to get the certification. But then how far as educators we need to go through this road? So what do you think? Maybe we start from Bu Rosita, because you work with the standard. Maybe you can explain to everybody here, what is the expectation? Should we really master all the standards in the future? Or how far do you think we should try to understand, try to integrate the standard into the teachings?
Yeah, thank you. I think Bruce has already mentioned that this sustainability is not a standalone topic, right? So I can imagine this is not about we will have another module, we call it sustainability, right? It should be integrated in relevant modules, that's fine. But definitely you need to have a module, we call it like if it is climate, in climate, what is climate, right? Because now we only focusing on the transaction in the company, which is not including the climate, right? So you need to ensure the student understand what is the risk and opportunity happen in the company related to the climate issue, right? I think that's first. And number two is how to integrate that risk thinking and opportunity thinking. I don't know, Bu, do we have risk module in the accounting department? No, right? I think if no, then my answer is you need to add on, because risk is not only related to the sustainability, also in the financial reporting, right? So if you don't have that, that's number two, my suggestion. You need to include the risk related module into the module for the accounting student. Environmental risk and opportunity, you need to also introduce, right? And the behavioral mentioned by Bruce, that's the most important. Because now as an accounting student, we are only focusing on teaching the hard things, right? How to understand the cost accounting, how to understand the tax, how to understand the PSAK, financial reporting. But we never think how to teach them to think integratedly, how to think multi-stakeholders, right? What in the module can drive them to think that they are not alone to prepare something, right? Because when you need to collaborate with somebody, you need to understand also how to collaborate and what things need to understand. For example, Bu Yuli, you are not technology people. But when you are in the preparation of financial reporting, you cannot say, I don't understand anything about technology, right? For example, like database. You need to understand about data management. It is not technology, because I'm involved in our advisory, right? In our firm, it is actually a part that you need to understand, not even sustainability reporting, but many of our students, when they graduate, they don't understand about data. Yeah, data is very important. How to manage the data. I think that's one thing also need to be included in our module. So this is very challenging question. I don't know whether any of countries has already have a integrated curriculum for the sustainability, Bruce. Is it already there, or it is something still need to develop? But there are some idea book which I believe need to be add on if we want to go to that sustainability. Definitely beyond numbers, because this is integrated mindset, integrated reporting.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think one of the most important points as you think about this as educators and your own competence is that you're going to need to know what you don't know. And because anytime that you try to teach something and you don't know the parts that you don't know about it, you don't know the limits of your expertise, that becomes very dangerous for your students. So in this area, starting out by knowing what you don't know and then deciding whether, okay, is this something I need to learn more? Is this something I need to go to somebody else who knows more, whether that's somebody in practice, whether that's somebody in another faculty? Just think about it in this university. You may be developing accounting students here, but just across in another building, there's somebody who's developing the future activist investor who's going to come and ask incredibly difficult questions of the company. So why not have that? Why not have that person come in and ask those challenging questions to your class and have those discussions, have those difficult conversations as development of the students. So I think that's probably the main message I'd give around your own upskilling. Again, you're not alone. In some areas, you do need to learn more clearly. We all have to ourselves. I'm having to do that in the position I sit in because I've never prepared a sustainability disclosure in my life. I need to educate myself, but I need to know the limits and I need to know when to go ask for help. At IFAC, I've got a colleague who's leading our work on sustainability assurance. When I have a question on it, I go to him. I don't try and just give the answer myself. And it's the same thing in the classroom. And the more you can bring together that broader expertise, the more you can follow a multi-stakeholder approach to education, the more you'll prepare your students for a world where they're going to be working multi-stakeholder teams across different disciplines. So yeah, it's maybe just some thoughts for us as individuals.
Juliani, you want to
Okay.
add something?
An idea is to bring in more complex, sophisticated cases that involve many dimensions or aspects to the classes, so that the students are trained to have thinking about solutions from many perspectives, from many dimensions. So for that, we could refer to some priorly written cases in the textbooks, or we could write up our own cases. So basically, that is to train students to think about many dimensions to solutions. And with regards to sustainability, I think it's worth to notice, to be aware that there are two aspects of sustainability. The one is, the first aspect is about the practice of the sustainability, which is usually conducted by the technicians. That is how to make the emission lower. That is usually conducted by the technicians. The second aspect is what accountants can do. That is to prepare the write-up and the disclosure in the financial statements. That is usually led by accountants. So that's additional from me, Bu Yuli.
You want to add something?
Yeah, Yuli, I wonder if I could say one thing on case studies. And this is just to close the loop on everything we've just said. If you follow all the advice you've just heard and you manage to, in partnership with others, with in practice, with those from other faculties, develop an amazing case study, please share it. And this is the whole approach, the journey we're going on. We're all going to be going on this journey together. And as an education community, and this is something IAI can facilitate, the academic community can facilitate, let's share what we develop, not for profit, but to make sure that we join together in going on this journey and preparing the future for the space. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you so much. So I think what Bruce mentioned the first time is, kind of realizing that we don't know will be a very important step, and trying to figure out the ways and communicate, share will be the way forward for us as educators to keep current with the requirement in the standard. So maybe just like one last questions for the panel related to the ethics and professionalism. So we know that it's a really important thing for IAIS, and now we have sustainability. Maybe previously we talked about ethics and professionalism, not specifically related to sustainability. So just kind of like a brief opinion about what do you think will be important that we need to stress when we talk about ethics and professionalism, And now we have the sustainability in the picture. Maybe Bu Rosita, as the standard setter, you want to talk about that?
It is now becoming more important, the skepticism, ethics, professionalism, because we are talking about sustainability reporting, as Bruce mentioned, it's a forward-looking. Remember, if we are talking about financial reporting, we're only talking about asset, liability, equity. What is that? That is something which has already incurred. Well, we are always talking that we are now more forward-looking, but it is based on whatever that we have done. So, for example, asset impairment is more forward-looking, but it is based on our current existing asset. Liability is already incurred like provision, but it is based on the contractual or constructive obligation. That's the concept of financial reporting, okay? But if you're talking about sustainability reporting, is totally different. We are talking about what happened in the future. It's very uncertain. So if you are part of the sustainability report preparation, so you are exposed to a lot of assumption and estimation. So this is the whole of fraud, okay? So it is very important now. Therefore, I talk to regulator, Belinda, Pak Ardan. Actually, the preparers need to be certified and part of the professional association, because yes, you can teach about ethics rules. But at the end of the day, if you pass and graduate from the university, even though it is a big and good university, who will monitor whether you comply with the ethic or not? The only way is to enforce that key person who prepare the financial reporting and sustainability reporting to comply with the ethic by enforce them to be certified and be the member of the accounting profession. Therefore, the ecosystem will be setting up that you as the preparer who responsible on that reporting process will be monitored by the regulator, in this case, maybe OJK, maybe Ministry of Finance, and also with the accounting profession. So in the future, if you did a fraud, there is a consequence for you. You will be taken out from the profession. Yeah, I think that's very important now, becoming more important if we are really being part of the sustainability reporting to you.
Thank you, Bu Rosita. From Buliani.
I could not say less about the importance of ethics for professional accountants. So in the CA exam, the topics of ethics is spread across the subjects. So we have 7 CA subjects, and every subject has 1 or 2 questions about ethics. So we are reminded every time about the importance of ethics. So in this opportunity, please give me some time to persuade all lecturers who are already at S3 level, the doctors and PhDs, to apply for the CA if you are not a CA yet, because we have the program where we are looking at your doctor or PhD degree as value. So that means you may not be obligated to take all 7 subjects, but you may be given waiver for several subjects. So that's, thank you, Bu Yuli.
Thank you, Mbak Liani. Bruce?
That is amazing. And that's a thought that I'll pick up on this afternoon when we talk about attractiveness of the profession. So amazing that that's happening here in Indonesia. I'm just going to quickly tell you what we've done in the education standards on ethics, because I skipped over it earlier because of time, but essentially 2 main things that I'll highlight. The one is around communication. So we've emphasized the concept that in all your communications, you need to be applying your ethical principles. So this is about teaching a student that every time you put a message out there, whether it's formal reporting, sustainability reporting, or less formal, that you, even if you're not giving an assurance opinion on it or signing it, you should be doing that ethically. And this speaks to obviously the issues around greenwashing and the idea that some of this material is not always, it comes with an agenda. And so it's about saying, let's apply our ethical principles to anything that we communicate, formally or informally, verbal or written, about financial information, about sustainability information. The other element revolves around working with other experts and people from other disciplines, and just the importance of thinking about the ethical implications of that and how we support those individuals and how we apply our professional skepticism when looking at their work. Really important aspect to this, I think, as we move forward. But to the extent that we can bring some of these other disciplines under the same ethical foundations that we have, I think we're going to get closer to the answer. That is something that IASBA, the International Ethics Standards Board, is looking at around specific independent standards for people from other disciplines who are doing sustainability assurance work, but it can apply equally to just any of the day-to-day work we do. So thinking about how we can help these individuals, not point out how unethical they are, but actually help them to learn about our ethical world and the way we do it, and support them to become more effective in what they do and be a part of our teams.
Okay, thank you, Bruce. And I think we ran out of time. So maybe for the final words, maybe each of the panelists, and I'm sure this is not enough, right? So we may want to talk more about this issue, want to learn more from Bruce, from Bu Rosita and Bu Liani, but I think this is a good start, and IAI will probably have more event in the future talking in more detail about everything that we just started to discuss today. So maybe the final word from each of the panelists, 1 minute, what you think will be like the most important thing you want the audience to remember and to think about the future of accounting education. Maybe we start from Bu Rosita.
Again, this is a new era of accounting profession, and this is our momentum to make this is more sexy for our students. Okay, so definitely it's a new thing for everybody, even for me. Let's collaborate. Don't shy to learn from others, right? Don't shy to tell other faculty and bring them to us, maybe to teach us, right? So this is the time for collaboration, but at the end of the day, this is for our future. This is for our accounting profession in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Bu Rosita. Bu Liani?
I have 1 minute, right? Okay. I want to take this 1 minute to share with Ibu Bapak dosen that currently our DSAP is very busy with the program called the Pathway to CA Indonesia. So under this program, we are working together with the Ministry of State-Owned Enterprises, the BUMN, which have their own regulation, very newly established, that requires their board of commissioners, their supervisory board, their directors in charge of financial management, which is the first line, their risk management work units, the second line, and also their third line, which is the audit committee, the risk monitoring committee, and internal audit, to undergo the CA exams to get the CA designations. So this is only to prove that whoever owns the CA designations have proved that they have the minimum level of professional accountant skills and knowledge. So there, I would say, please, Ibu Bapak Doktor yang belum CA, please apply yourself to the DSAP, IAI. We would be glad to help you to get the CA designations. That's from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bu Liani. A very generous offer. So hopefully, I see a lot of my students from the doctoral program. So hopefully we'll see some of you there. Bruce, your last comment?
I really think this is just an invitation to lead, to really encourage all of you as educators to lead in this area. And leading doesn't mean you do it all yourself. Leading doesn't mean you need to know everything. It helps if you know people who can go on the journey with you. And remembering that you're not on the journey alone, and don't let your colleagues go on the journey alone. Let's go together. This is a public interest issue. It is urgent for our world. In a country like Indonesia, you know the impacts of climate change, you know the realities, but you also happen to be a country that, as we've heard, has been leading in the space and leads in the profession. So be leaders yourself, encourage your students to step up and help us move the profession forward and position us to be a part of the solution as we become more, bring our expertise to this new area of sustainability reporting. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's give a round of applause to the three panelists so hopefully after the discussion today, we will not face this as a challenge, but more as an opportunity for us to collaborate and also to learn more and help save the planet. Okay? I mean, like usually people say accountant, so what's accountant do for the planet? We actually can contribute so much. And as educators, I think it is okay for me to say that you all are the safeguard of the profession. So let's give a round of applause to everybody who come here and participate. Unfortunately, we don't have time for Q&A, but there will be the second session. Stay, don't go anywhere. So the second session after lunch will be held in this room and we'll have more discussion. So thank you so much, everybody. And we look forward for more discussion after lunch. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.